threshold.
Do you think Trump was right to bomb Iran?
Do I think he was right to bomb Iran? I think diplomacy with Iran has been exhausted with this leadership.
Can you explain that to me? Because I'm really keen to just understand where this conflict with Iran has originated from.
So Iran, up through 1979, it had various monarchies. The Pahlavi monarchy that came into power in the 1920s was the last dominant one. And it had built, at least through the Cold War, a close relationship with the West, specifically the United States. Iran served as one of the two pillars of U.S. power in the Middle East, the Saudis being the other. This is before Israel became important to the United States national security system. And so Iran and the Saudis represented really a projection of U.S. power in the Middle East. With the revolution of '79, that went away.
We supported the Shah and
absolutely.
And you tell it better.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So the United States and the Shah, the king of Iran, were extremely close. I mean, this peaked under Richard Nixon and Kissinger's time. And as a result, the Shah became very, very wealthy, looked to rapidly modernize the country. But what he didn't do, Iran experienced tremendous economic growth, but not political growth to match it. So what happens when a country becomes wealthy and becomes more modernized, becomes more European, which is what the Shah was trying to do, the people wanted other things that Europe had. They wanted free elections. They wanted free press. They wanted freedom of assembly, right? They wanted democracy to go with their dishwashers. Mm-hmm. The thing is the Shah said, I will give you all of the trappings of modernity, high rises, air conditioning, indoor plumbing, dishwashers, electric appliances, but this democracy that you want, that's pushing it too far. So you had this rapid economic growth, this uneven political growth, and there the seeds of revolution were planted. The people were unhappy, and they said, wait a minute, why can't we have the other things to go with this growth? So the revolution happened with a bunch of different forces coming to play, not just the Islamists, but the Islamists were the ones that dominated at the end, and they cleared everyone out. They killed them, basically, marginalized them. And they have three pillars they stand on. Three, like if you want to call it their mission statement. Number one is independence from the West. This Iranian regime believes no more dependence on the West like the Shah did. Number two is the destruction of Israel or hostility to Israel. That is fundamental.
Why?
Because they see Israel as an outpost of American power and arguably not colonialism, but they see Israel as a projection of US power. They also see in their attempt to go to pillar number three, which is exporting the revolution to other Muslim Shia countries, they see Israel as getting in the way because it represents this non-Muslim entity in an otherwise Islamic part of the world. So it's inconsistent with their goal of expanding the Islamic revolution. You can't do that when Israel is literally in the way. Mm-hmm. So it has to go, or it has to be diminished.
And they've said that.
Oh yeah, this is Khomeini, the founder of the republic. These are his three principles. So you have these three principles. You take any one of them away, the whole edifice, the whole thing falls down. It's like a tripod. Break one of its legs, it doesn't have enough to stand on. So diplomacy with the U.S. means ending hostilities with the West, and it means acknowledging Israel in some way. This government cannot do that. Otherwise, it loses all credibility. It spent 40 plus years saying, these are the things we stand for. If they all of a sudden abandon those principles, they're gonna have no credibility with their public. Then why should they still be in power? Mm-hmm. It's not because the public wants hostility with Iran and Israel. The public wants relations. But this government is saying, we oppress you, we terrorize you, all because we're keeping you safe and we're adhering to these three principles.
And that's 40 years of brainwashing as well.
Absolutely, of indoctrination. So diplomacy had reached its end. To answer your question, a long answer to a good question, was Trump right to bomb it? Trump had reached the limits of diplomacy. And with Iran being a nuclear threshold state, and with Israel after the 2023 Hamas attacks realizing it could no longer tolerate this degree of a threshold Iran, the time to act, the pressure was there. So I think
and the opportunity, because of the way it had weakened
the defense systems, the proxies.
Their true proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas.
Right. So I think there was a window of opportunity, and Iran simply was not going to abandon its nuclear program on its own. Diplomacy was not going to get us there. They don't want to. It gives them too much leverage.
And it's never going to abandon its nuclear program.
Yeah. I've learned to not say never anymore in
But with
politics.
a regime change, I think that's a different story. But in the existing regime, the regime will keep itself in power. That's my point about that's the analogy to North Korea. We all kind of agree on is that their perception is if we have a nuclear weapon, then the West really can't mess with us.
And you mentioned something else I liked. You said that, I think when you were saying if in the role of the DNI or the president, you get information, you were wrong, okay, you have to reassess. Our leaders, and this goes back to sort of the topic of this book I'm working on, our male leaders especially suffer from cognitive dissonance, right? Cognitive dissonance is when you have a set of beliefs and you get information that is inconsistent with your beliefs. That makes all humans incredibly uncomfortable, all right? What do you do with that? Well, there's multiple ways that we psychologically try to neutralize that. One of them is you change your view. You say, you know what, I was wrong. This is the correct way to see things. Most people won't do that. That's embarrassing. Most men won't do that. Most men in positions of power absolutely won't do that. If they admit that they're wrong, then what does that say, right? So instead, they double down, they reinforce, they become stubborn, and they end up then, in order to justify that, have to act aggressively. So we suffer from basically men in
It's the
positions
see I'm
of,
right problem.
Exactly. Right.
I told you so.
Exactly.
I told you so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to reinforce your false belief, because if you don't, it means you were wrong.
Yeah.
And if you're Donald Trump, if you're Khamenei, if you're Benjamin Netanyahu and you were wrong, how bad does that look? You're out. Your credibility is gone in this culture that we're in. Right? So that leads to the other problem, the cognitive dissonance that these world leaders can't seem to handle.
Do you think we were right to strike Iran?
I think that we did the right thing at the wrong time. And I will say that because the President of the United States is the President of the United States. He's earned the seat. We wanted him there. We voted for it. He gets to do whatever he wants. But considering the politics between Israel and Iran at the time, considering the, at the very least, inconsistent intelligence that we have about the actual status of the weapons that Iran was developing, and then the political position inside the United States being where it was with failed tariffs, being where it was with an inability to negotiate peace in Gaza, an inability to negotiate peace in Ukraine, where it was, if it was the right thing to do, we certainly seem to have done it prematurely along with preemptively.
When would have been a better time? And I'm not a proponent of war. I'm just wondering, there is never a good time. When would have been a better time?
I mean, if you want to speak like a parent, then you're right. There's never a good time, right? But first of all, I think a limited bombing run, that's not how you eradicate. That's not how you totally obliterate a country's nuclear capability. You have to commit to either multiple bombing runs. You have to coordinate attacks. And in this particular instance, Israel made an offer to the United States. It said, hey, we would like for you to come in and use your bunker buster bomb, this technology that only you have. But if you don't, we have other options. I would have loved to have been like, let's see those other options. Let's see how far you can take this on your own, because you're the one, Israel, that has an existential threat from Iran. You're the one who's dealing with and had phenomenal success with the proxies in your area, in your region. And we are the country that currently can continue to say that we don't violate sovereign borders for now, right? We obviously invaded Iraq, we invaded Afghanistan. We've had our history with this, and we've had our history of breaking international law. And we always have the option to stop, bombing across borders. But instead of waiting, instead of letting Israel kind of exhaust all of their options, we went in. And why? And did we go in because it was in our best interest? Or did we go in because it was somebody else's Venn diagram bigger benefit and our Venn diagram smaller benefit?
I have a theory about that, but first I want to ask you a question about your subject, matter expertise.